Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Read and Write with Natasha. Today, I have Kathy Otten, who's a published author, a book coach, editor, and a workshop presenter. She writes historical romance and have written multiple short stories and four novels, and she's working on her fifth. She is also a certified book coach. Hi, Kathy. Nice to meet you. So, Kathy, you're a certified book coach. So that sounds really impressive. So, what is a certified book coach and how do you get certified?
Okay, I was certified through Author Accelerator, which is a program designed to help authors write their whatever they want to write, a memoir, a novel, nonfiction book. And it's been
Okay.
like on the back burner, it's on their bucket list, whatever. Everybody has a different goal. And it's
Okay.
designed to help develop coaching as a new um, skill to help authors. So it involves more than just knowing how to edit or knowing developmental work or any of that. It's about helping each individual person reach their goal. So it can vary from person
Okay.
to person. Everybody has different needs. Some people come into it, they have a full manuscript and they want to know how to pitch to an agent. Some people have a great idea, they don't know how to articulate it in a cohesive way. They have all these crazy ideas. They don't know how to funnel it in, and a coach will help do that. A coach also helps with project management. It's like you said, you have kids and things get crazy, and maybe we need to reschedule, or maybe you're sick and we need to, work through some problems that you're having. And it's a support group, support person, as well as a person that can help you with your actual writing. So
Hmm.
it's it's like a coach, like a fitness coach or a nutrition coach or a life coach. It's got layers to it, and in the training that we take, we learn not only how to work with people, we learn how to develop a manuscript, how to pitch to an agent. Um, it keeps you in the loop of what's going on. The changes in publishing that normally a person who is sitting home alone and wants to write a book and they don't understand how publishing works and they don't understand the nuances of the changes in publishing with independent publishing and hybrid publishing. And there's so much changes, it's always evolving. And being part of Author Accelerator as a coach, it helps keep me as a coach in the loop so I can help each
Mm.
writer
Hmm.
meet their goal.
So, what are the top pain points that aspiring authors face, and how do you help them with these pain points?
Well, sometimes it's hard because everybody's got different problems. Everybody's had a different life experience. So,
Yeah.
say a person has had a great idea for a book and they've always wanted to write it and they don't know what to do with it. And you can
Okay.
help them develop an outline to move forward. Some people have written something and they're halfway through and they're stuck and they don't know what to do, and you can help them work through that. Some people they've written a book and they've taken it to friends or whatever or a critique group and it was trashed. This is terrible, you don't know what you're doing, you should do it this
Yeah.
way, not that way. And so they get discouraged and feel like this was all in vain, and they kind of put their dream away. And
Yeah.
coaching will help the writer feel confident about what they want to do and how can they do it, and help you get the tools to succeed. And success is measured, by each individual's goal. I mean, it doesn't mean that I'm going to guarantee you a bestseller or make them,
Yeah.
deal or anything. Everybody has different goals, and there's no guarantees because everything is, subjective. But it's about the person, the author, and their writing, and how to strengthen them so they feel confident in what they're doing.
Hmm. And can you share some success stories with us of something that somebody was really discouraged, and like you walk them through the process. Just curious how you define success.
Well, don't really. It's whether the author feels good about what they've done. Then I feel happy.
Okay.
It's not about
Okay.
my personal success with it. It's my goal
Okay.
to help others. Um, it's a crazy world, this whole publishing thing, and where everybody is in their life. And so, I helped somebody. They had a complete manuscript, and he wanted to know what to do with it. Is it any good? So I read it, and we chatted on the phone, and talked about how this could be improved and how that could be improved, that kind of thing. I met someone at a conference, and we chatted, and she sent me her manuscript, and we worked through some of the problems with that, and she was happy with that. So, if the client is happy, then I'm happy.
Okay.
Got what
So
they
so
wanted.
so what is the difference between an editor and a book coach? Like, if someone sends you the manuscript, don't they do the same thing for an editor?
Well, there's like different kinds of editors. There is like a developmental editor, and they'll look at the whole
Okay.
thing and say, your character arc is skewed off here, or we don't have a complete arc for the plot, or your secondary character's taking over. There's things in the developmental structure of the novel that could be off. And a developmental editor
Okay.
will kind of look at that and say, this is gone off the rails here, and here's some suggestions of how you can fix it. You know, let's go from there. A line editor looks at stuff and says, this needs to go here because your paragraphs aren't linking together, and they
Okay.
help you with, like, you have too many adjectives or whatever in a row, that kind of sort of thing. And a copy editor looks at copy. They're like, comma doesn't go here. This should be a semicolon. This needs, um, so copy editors are real specific to the copy, the copy per se. They don't fix
Yeah.
things. They don't fix things.
Yeah.
So I don't do copy editing. I will do line editing and developmental editing because you can catch those things having been trained in it and having written for years. But I don't do copy. That's really hard. It's a whole different skill. Editors are not coaches. They're just looking at the specific work itself. They're not looking at the writer and meshing that together. So I don't know
Okay.
if that helps your explanation or not.
Okay. So, um, what are like the types of publishing deals people are getting these days, or they tend to go now mostly to self-publishing? Like, where is the industry going these days?
It depends. I mean, everybody says that traditional publishing is going away, but it really hasn't. It sort of seems to me like, this is just my opinion, it's sort of leveled out.
Okay.
A lot of people have that open window now where they don't have to go through the gatekeepers of traditional publishing
Yeah.
anymore. But initially, when everybody started self-publishing, they weren't putting in the time and the work. And now people are starting
Okay.
to say, I really want quality work. I want my best work. So they'll hire an editor, they'll hire a butch coach, um, to help them do their best, because it's been their dream for a long time, or it's their second or third book, and they really want to make sure that it's going to get out there and be reflective of them as their best work. So they're starting to people are not just throwing stuff up there anymore. They're like
Okay.
running their own little business or whatever. And then there's, you can do it that way, independent. There's hybrid publishing, where it's kind of a combination of, you pay for, it's kind of like an a la carte kind of a thing, where I don't know how to format, so I'll pay this company to format or edit for me, and you buy these kind of like, it's a blend of independent and traditional. Then there's small press, which is usually, they do the editing, the cover art, etc., which is the way I usually go. because I really don't do copy editing, and I don't, you know, I don't want to get involved with formatting and putting it up there for all the different formats for, you know, Mobi or Kindle or Kobo. You know, they all have different formats. So I just let the small press publisher do that, and usually they are all ebook. And then sometimes you can get a publisher that will also do them in print. Depends on
Mm.
who you go with. So that's the other thing about a coach. A coach kind of keeps their finger on the pulse of what's going on and who's taking what and what agent. Some people wouldn't go through an agent, and that's their choice. Everybody's got a different goal. So yeah, publishing is changing all the time. I mean, it used to just be a free for all with independent publishing, but now it's starting to be a valid way to publish. It used to be you were
Yeah. Yeah.
considered a vanity press, where you just write anything and it goes up there. And some people still do that. That's their choice.
Yeah. Yeah. So you published four novels, correct?
Correct. Actually,
How did you publish them? Which route did you choose for your four novels?
the small press. So I
All
would,
of all of them the same one?
my new one actually is with a different publisher, but it's still a small press.
Okay.
Where you finish the novel, you complete it the best you can, you go through it, you rewrite, do as much editing as you can, make it the best you can do, write your query letter and your synopsis, and submit it, and wait for a response. And then if they accept it, then they give you the contract, you sign the contract or not. Then they go through the editing again, come up with the galleys. Sometimes you have to do like two or three edits, depending on how well you've executed. And, they do the cover art and publish it. And it goes up on all of the distributors, like, Sony, Google Books, Kobo, uh, Kindle. I'm trying to think. I'm blanking out. And then my publishers both have a print option where it's also available in print. Then a couple of my short stories, I had it done for audiobook. So some of those are available in audio. But if
Mm.
you'd have to pay for your own narrator and stuff like that. So that can get kind of pricey sometimes. Depends. So
Do you have to pay something out of your pocket for like a hybrid publisher for a small press?
For a small press, it runs with a traditional model. So you go through the submission process. The only thing you wouldn't do is go with an agent, like the big five in New York, like Penguin,
Yeah.
Random House, Simon Schuster. You're going to go with an agent, and they're going to pretty much vet your manuscript. And then when they submit it to an editor at one of those big publishing houses, they already know that it kind of went through an agent, and that's why they only accept manuscripts from agents. When you go through a small press, you do the same thing, except you don't need an agent.
Yeah.
A hybrid, they they have different packages, so you might want to just pay for editing. Um,
Mm.
it's kind of a mix. I've never done hybrid, so that's really not my wheelhouse. I don't know as much about it as I should probably, but most people do small press, traditional, or independent.
Mm. Mm. And how do you find your clients? Like, or how do clients find you?
Well, Author Accelerator has a referral list. So if people come to Author Accelerator through their website or whatever, they can find a list of coaches. I just have stuff that I, use my signature line. I talk to people, you know. Another coach might refer me to a client that they don't feel comfortable working with, or it's not in their wheelhouse. Like, I tend to write historical romance and stuff, so I probably am not the best coach for someone who wants to write sci-fi. So if I know a coach that likes sci-fi or fantasy, I might refer that client to them. So it's kind of a networking kind of a thing. Plus I'm also, a member of a writing organization called Pen Writers, and so my name is out there as a coach. So it's it's more word of mouth sort of thing. Um,
Mm. Yeah.
but it's a slow build to do the
Do
coaching
you
side.
use social media? Do you do social media?
A lot of people do. I am not the best one for social media. I tend to get sucked into the time of it, and then after a while it's like, what am I doing here? I just killed the whole day. So then I go for a while where I'm not on social media at all. So it's not my
Yeah.
favorite thing. I don't, and then half the time I don't know what to post. I'd rather focus my attention on something else. So I don't
Mm.
know. It could be a detriment to my success as a writer or a coach, but I, at this point, I'm just going to go with what's been going so far.
And
Everybody,
how did you manage how did you manage to write so many books? How do you divide your time? When do you find the time to write all of that?
I don't know. You know, life changes and you change. It's like I always wrote. I used to, when my kids were infants, and used to feed them in the middle of the night. I would pick up these Harlequin romances that you could get at the end of the checkout counter back then, and I would
Yeah.
read them and
Yeah.
say, "Geez, I can do this. This isn't hard." So like I
Yeah.
would, when I had 15 minutes here or 20 minutes there when the kids were sleeping or at school, I would write, and then I would try to submit and go through the whole publishing thing, and I was always rejected. So I threw it under the
Okay.
bed. The kids got big, and when they were in high school, it's like, I want to try this again. And so I'd pull out those old things. And then a friend of mine at work told me about pen writers, and they were having a little mini conference thing. So I went to that, and I really enjoyed myself. And everybody's like, "You got to join. You got to join." So once I joined, I started getting the elements of craft. I started learning the craft, the tools that you need to put these stories together in a cohesive way. I learned,
Okay.
about character arcs and plots and conflict and tension and internal conflict and all these things. And there's a learning curve to that. It doesn't come here. You have to work at it. So some of these
Okay.
books that I started in, like, back when the kids were little, and I would write
Okay.
in notebooks, those things were pulled out. So, I mean, one book I could say it took me 10 years to write it. It was before the internet, so I would have to send letters to people, it's like historical societies, and say, I need help with this, that, or the other thing. And, it was a long process. But, so it
Yeah.
maybe one book took 10 years, one book took, it's hard because and then I tend to be sporadic. So it's like, oh, I don't want to work on this one right now. I want to work on this one. So, it's
Okay.
like, it's, I don't know. Some people are like die hard, 6 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they're going to write. And I always get,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
have other things going on. You know, it's like, okay, this is my plan for the day, and I'm going to write, so many words. Doesn't work always, but try. Things happen, doctor's appointments, the dog has to go to the vet. I got the other business, the writing and coaching business, to do book work and
Yeah.
and invoices and all that stuff to keep track of the business side, and so that sometimes that takes up time. Then if I'm doing like an event, like a mini conference, or I go to a conference, it throws everything out of kill. It's like it's a hit and miss sometimes. So I don't
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
a standard. I'm going to write only these times, and everything else has to go around with it. I just like, okay, I have a priority here. This has to get done by blah blah. So I'm not going to write this week. I have to get this other thing done. So I don't know. That might not be the best way, but that's kind of where I'm floating right now.
Okay. So you're working on a fifth novel. Is it the same genre? What is it about?
Actually, the fifth novel came out in June.
Ah,
Um,
good. Congrats.
and it was through a small press, and it was different because it
Okay.
was a young adult novel, and it's kind of a mystery romance. Not a
Okay.
romance because it's in my brain all the time. It's a mystery,
Okay.
paranormal mystery. It's a young adult. It's about a 15-year-old kid.
Oh.
So that one came out in June, and I was working on it at my job because I work. as a substitute teacher's aide. So if they need somebody to come into the school, I come in. So a lot of times, because I'm not a certified teacher, they throw me in study halls and pull a teacher, they float people around. So I'll be sitting there in study halls, I take my flash drive and stick it in a computer while the kids are all doing their thing. And I started working on this young adult. So the novel that I was working on got put on the back burner because I'm like, oh, I have this on a flash drive, I'll just play with it. So from last September until December, I polished up that young adult novel and then submitted it. Meantime, the novel that I was working on got put on the back burner. And now I've pulled it back out again to try and get that one finished. It's finished, but it's way over word count, and I need to cut it. And I'm trying to figure out where to cut. So that's another thing, cutting words. But I also teach online, and so I've got some online classes I'm doing and different things like that that take up time too. So
We have, like, in this business, we sort of have to survive. But what are the top mistakes that you see authors do these days, or aspiring authors, or starting authors?
sometimes it's about how to organize your
Mm,
your structure, your story. Sometimes people write different ways. Some people are plotters, some people are pantsers, and there's no right way, there's no wrong way, but each way kind of has their problems. So if you're a plotter and you meticulously plot out your novel, sometimes you lose the creative side of the character. So sometimes you might lose the internal thread that drives the emotion and the tension of the story because you've so meticulously lined up every little thing. Then sometimes plotters, they go off the rails because they're so creative. It's just flow, 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 and they've lost their structure. So somewhere in there is kind of like the biggest problems. I think a lot of people tend to go, this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens at the end. I think Steven Spielberg said something about a lot of books have great beginnings that keep beginning. Um, they don't have that arc,
yeah,
that
yeah.
climax, a dark moment where the character realizes they were mistaken in their beliefs about themselves or the world or whatever, and they change, and that change causes them to save the world or whatever their goal is. So sometimes I don't think that authors spend enough time on the characters to really touch on that internal thread so that they don't really, it's a lot of surface. And I think that even pantsers who try to be really creative lose sight of that internal thread. So I think that to me is kind of the biggest thing. And it's a hard thing to find. I mean, even if I look back in my stuff that I wrote back in 2000, it's like maybe I could have done better, you know. So there's a growth curve to it. I don't know. Everybody's got a different thing. But yeah, internal seems to be the thing that I've noticed reading manuscripts, the internal conflict. Excuse me.
And how do you help them solve that? Like, what kind of advice would you give them?
To go back, because basically your story starts in the middle of the person's life, and how they react from this start of your story forward to the end is all how they react, how they feel is all based on what happened before. So I think people really need to dig into what happens to create that misbelief, that lie, that perception that they have about themselves or another person. Or I mean, like, if you kept it simple and said you're at the start of your story, your character believes that all dogs bite. Well, what happened to cause that? you know
Mm,
it couldn't have been one incident, it would have had to have been several incidents. And so when they hit their story and they want to reach for their goal, that whole misbelief about all dogs bite is going to come into play, and they're going to have to that point where they find out that not all dogs bite, and sometimes your dog can save your life. So you got to go backward to go forward. I mean, because you're really starting in the middle of your character. It's just the
Mm.
story starts in the middle and then goes forward, but every reaction that the character has to the obstacles that you throw in their path as they reach their goal, every character that they encounter, how they react to all of that, how they handle frustration, how they handle, a problem, every decision they make is all going to be based on backstory. It's like, and that, like, say, if you believe all dogs bite, if you have to go from A to B, point A to B, and there's a dog there, you're not going to go that way. You're going to make a decision to go another way based on your belief that all dogs bite. So your character might have to face that fear by being stuck in a situation where they have to handle a dog or they have to rely
Mm-hmm.
on a dog. You know what I mean? It's not that dog. It's just kind of like coming free throw here, but um, it's based on their misbelief. And I don't think people dig
Yeah.
backward enough so that that character who's moving forward is distinctive enough from every other character in the story. That their reactions, decisions, what they say, and how they say it, and frame it, and the lie that's created, and how they avoid things, it's all based on the backstory. So people
Mm.
might figure out who their first grade teacher was, or they might figure out their favorite ice cream flavor, but they don't really dig into their internal fears that everyone might have. So
Mm.
that's just how I've
Do
seen
you,
it.
yeah, do you advise them to use like certain tools? Like, for example, I use Scrivener to outline my book. Do you have like any kind of favorite tools that you use or
I
advise your clients to use?
Whatever works for, like, if you use Scrivener and you're comfortable with it and you've used it for a long time and you find it helpful, go for it. I don't think there's.
Okay.
I mean, I'm old school. I like my notebooks because I can rough it out and I don't get stuck with little red squiggle lines that say I misspelled a word. Um,
Okay.
so everybody has their way. Whatever tools work. I mean, the old days I used a typewriter. Now I love my computer. Things change, and you learn to work with different tools. Some people like Scrivener, and some people don't. I tend to be old school. So whatever works for you.
Mm. Have you thought about the effect of AI on writing?
Oh my god. I think we have. It's like, okay, I think that there's a danger of losing humanity in all of that
Okay.
because this is just my opinion, and I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But I mean, there might be some good to it. To me, I'm looking at the long term picture. Like, if I'm on um, Microsoft Word and the grammar stuff kicks in and it says this is wrong. It's not always wrong. Those techniques and those programs, you have to be smart enough to figure out that this is
Yeah.
wrong. It doesn't work in this situation because fiction writing is a little different from technical writing, and I think those programs tend to follow, specific. They don't allow for the creative side of life and the creative
Mm.
side of the author. So it'll say it's wrong. Like, you have to use a colon here, and it's like you're in the middle of dialogue, and it's like, no, you don't put colons in the middle of dialogue. So
Mm.
I think that when you get caught up in depending on those tools, you're not using your brain. I think it's like a crutch. And then pretty soon, where's it going to go? Um,
Yeah.
and then where
Yeah.
is the voice of the author? Because how you develop your character is going to be different from mine, and how you're going to structure your sentences is going to be different from mine. Because you should be able to pick up a Stephen King book and not see the author, and you know that he wrote it because his style, his voice comes through. And I think if you get too dependent on these, boxes of how to write, I think you're going to lose the voice of the author eventually. Right now it's still in its infancy, but I think that eventually there's a danger of that. And if you're aware of it going in, then maybe you'd say, no, I need to trust my own gut. And if you, I just think that if people don't do that, everyone's going to become little robotic authors and all the writing will sound the same. But
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
just my thought.
True.
There's probably a good side
So
that I don't know about.
true. So do you have any final tips before we conclude this fascinating conversation? Do you have any like tips for
I,
anyone who wants to write a book and scared?
don't be scared. I mean, it's hard. I mean, there's people that say, it's 10% talent, 90% perseverance.
Mm,
So, just dig in and do it. Chuck Sambucino told us once at a writing group, he's local anyway. He told us, put down the remote. I mean, how much time do you spend? It's like
mm,
social media's thing, how much time do people spend on their phones? Um,
yeah,
that 20 minutes, that half hour, and write. Even if
yeah,
it's junk, you've written it, and once it's tangible, then you can fix it. So
yeah,
it's just about putting in the time and the work. I mean, it's not easy. It's hard. It's isolating. It's like you said. It's scary. It's fearful. But it depends how bad you want it. Do you want it? I mean, any pro athlete just doesn't become
true.
a pro athlete unless they, Tom Brady practices throwing footballs. Um,
Yeah,
so you have to put it in, but you can't fix it if it's not down on paper somewhere, whether it's in your computer or on your notebook.
yeah, yeah. You cannot fix what's not there.
I mean, it's great if it's in your head, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be, you can be writing along and say, I don't remember that character's name, so I'm just going X for now. You don't have to fix it. It doesn't have to be word for word perfect. Just get it out, get it done, keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. I don't know. And
Yeah,
grab your minutes while you can, and then you have to prioritize which minutes are important. Am I going to binge watch, Suits, or am I going to binge watch, something, or am I going to take that hour every night and write? Or my kids are. That's what I used to do. My kids were napping when they were little, and it'd be in a half an hour, and I could grab a half hour and write. Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Squeezing it between the cracks, as they
yeah,
say.
and
Yeah,
eventually it starts to add up, and eventually you get it. That's why I said sometimes it took me 10 years to write one book because it was an
yeah,
increment.
yeah, yeah. True. So this been wonderful, Kathy, and I'm sure anyone who's listening or watching and they wanna write a book, they got something out of this conversation, and if they want a book coach, they can always reach out to you. They can reach out to you on your website. Anywhere else they can reach out to you besides your website and your
I'm
social
on
media.
Facebook, some in and out on Facebook, LinkedIn. So
Sounds great. Well, thank you very much for your time. And for anyone who's listening or watching, thank you for staying with us and listening to this fascinating discussion. And until we meet again.
thank you, Natasha.